Victoria James's hands trembled as she stared at the wedding invitation. Not from nerves, she didn't do nerves, from rage. And from the realization that she'd just done
She's
something
really into
insane.
her drawings.
Yeah, she's a natural artist.
Asked a complete stranger to be her fake
Wow, that's
boyfriend
great.
at this wedding. A man she'd met exactly once when his daughter had spilled orange juice all over her Stuart Weitzman heels 3 days ago. The ivory cardstock felt expensive between her fingers. Embossed gold lettering announced the union of Richard Ashford and Melissa Parker at Willow Creek Vineyard in Woodinville. 6 weeks from now. Black tie optional, reception to follow. Victoria sat perfectly still in her corner office on the 24th floor of Cascade Logistics headquarters. The Seattle skyline spread before her like a trophy she'd earned through blood and sleepless nights. Mount Rainier loomed in the distance, snow-capped and indifferent to human drama. The quarterly report on her desk showed revenue up 23%. Her company, built from nothing, now employed 200 people and moved temperature-sensitive pharmaceuticals across the Pacific Northwest with precision that had made her name synonymous with reliability. But the invitation in her hand proved what Richard had always said. She could run a company, but she couldn't hold a relationship. The memory arrived unbidden, sharp as broken glass. 9 months ago, standing in the doorway of the apartment they'd shared for 2 years, Richard packing designer luggage with methodical efficiency. "You're brilliant, Victoria, but you're an ice sculpture of a girlfriend. I need warmth, not quarterly projections." She hadn't cried, hadn't begged, had simply watched him leave, her face a mask while something essential inside her shattered into pieces too small to find. Now Richard was marrying Melissa Parker, a wellness influencer whose Instagram featured sunrise yoga poses and affirmations about being present. Everything Victoria apparently wasn't. Her assistant had forwarded the invitation with a sticky note. "Should I RSVP regrets?" The sensible answer was yes. Decline politely, move on with dignity intact. Instead, Victoria had checked the box marked, "Will attend," and written +1 in the guest line before her rational mind could intervene. The problem? She had no +1, no boyfriend, no casual date she could call. No one in her carefully constructed professional world who wouldn't turn this into networking opportunity or office gossip. For 3 days, she'd spiraled quietly, allowing no one to see her panic. She'd researched escort services before deleting her search history in disgust. She'd considered asking David Chen from finance, who'd asked her to coffee twice before correctly reading her polite refusals. She'd even contemplated going alone, proving she needed no one. But the thought of walking into Willow Creek Vineyard solo, of enduring Patricia Ashford's sympathetic smile and whispered conversations about poor Victoria, still single, was more than even her pride could bear. The intercom buzzed. Her assistant's voice. Another crisis in the Phoenix distribution center. Temperature controls failing on a vaccine shipment worth $50 million. Victoria straightened her spine, pushed the invitation aside, and became the CEO everyone expected. The woman who solved impossible problems. The woman who never let personal chaos interfere with professional excellence. The woman who was apparently so terrified of being alone that she'd already set in motion the most desperate plan of her life. She just had to find the stranger who'd witnessed her moment of weakness and convince him to help. 3 days earlier, Victoria had needed air after a brutal board meeting, the kind where older men questioned every decision, their doubt wrapped in polite language that couldn't quite hide their belief that a 34-year-old woman couldn't possibly know what she was doing. Riverside Cafe near Pike Place Market had outdoor seating with a view of Elliott Bay. She'd ordered black coffee, Pike Place roast, strong enough to strip paint, and claimed a corner table. The autumn sun felt good on her face. For 5 minutes, She could pretend to be someone whose biggest worry wasn't whether her company would survive the next quarter. The orange juice hit her shoes in a perfect arc. Victoria froze, watching the liquid pool around her $850 Stuart Weitzmans. Cream-colored suede, now stained bright orange. Her first thought, at least it's not red wine. Her second, she should be furious. But fury didn't come. She looked up to find a 6-year-old girl standing motionless, her face crumpling toward tears. Wild brown curls, paint-stained overalls, one shoe untied. The child had tripped over nothing, her coordination betraying her at full speed. Before Victoria could speak, a man dropped to his knees beside the girl, not checking the mess, not apologizing to the angry corporate woman, simply asking in the gentlest voice Victoria had ever heard, "You okay, sweetheart? Did you hurt yourself?" The girl shook her head, tears spilling, not from pain, from embarrassment. The man pulled her into his arms, kissed the top of her head. "Accidents happen. You're okay. We're okay." Only then did he look at Victoria, still kneeling with his daughter in his arms. Mid-30s, maybe. 6 feet tall, brown hair falling into his eyes, flannel shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows, jeans worn soft from use, not fashion. Carpenter's hands, scarred and strong. "I'm so sorry about your shoes. I'll pay for cleaning, replacement, whatever you need. Harper's still working on her coordination." His voice carried a trace of Pacific Northwest cadence, unhurried and genuine. Victoria heard herself say something she never said. "They're just shoes, really, it's fine." The man stared at her like she'd spoken Mandarin. Then he smiled, not the polished networking smile she was used to, but something warm and surprised and entirely real. "That's kind of you. Most people wouldn't be so understanding." He helped Harper clean up the spill with practiced efficiency, the choreography of a parent who'd done this 1,000 times. Apologized 3 more times. Victoria waved it off 3 more times. Harper watched Victoria with enormous eyes, curiosity replacing shame. As they gathered their things to leave, something possessed Victoria to speak. "Wait!" The man turned back, Harper's hand in his, both looking at her with identical expressions of polite interest. "This is going to sound insane." Victoria's voice stayed steady despite the chaos of what she was about to propose. "But I have a situation, and I think you might be able to help." The man blinked. "I'm listening." "I have a wedding to attend, my ex-boyfriend's wedding, and I need someone to go with me. Not a boyfriend, just someone I'm seeing casually." Silence. Then, "You want me to pretend to be your boyfriend? At your ex's wedding?" "Date, not boyfriend, just someone I'm seeing." Harper tugged her father's hand. "Daddy, is this lady asking you on a date? Like in the movies?" "It's complicated, sweetheart." Victoria pulled a business card from her purse, writing her personal number on the back. "Think about it, please." The man produced his own card from his wallet, insisting she send him the dry cleaning bill. Victoria glanced at the text. Marcus Reed, Custom Woodworking and Furniture. Below that, an address, Beacon Community Center, South Seattle, area code 206. She pocketed the card and watched them leave, Marcus's hand steady on Harper's shoulder, their easy affection so foreign to Victoria's carefully controlled world that it made her chest ache. 72 hours later, she called the number on the card and asked him to meet her at the same cafe. Marcus arrived early. Victoria could see him through the window as she approached, sitting at their previous table with Harper beside him. The girl had a coloring book this time and a sippy cup with the Seattle Seahawks logo. Marcus looked nervous, his fingers drumming the table's edge. Victoria wore charcoal slacks and a silk blouse, professional but not severe. She'd spent 20 minutes choosing the outfit before cursing herself for caring what a stranger thought. Marcus stood when she approached. Basic manners, but so rare in her world that it caught her off guard. "Thank you for meeting me." Curiosity got the better of me. He gestured to Harper. "My mother canceled last minute. Hope you don't mind." "Not at all." Harper looked up from her coloring book, purple crayon in hand. "Hi! Did you fix your shoes?" "I did. They're good as new."
That's good. I felt really bad.
Victoria sat across from them, pulling out her tablet with practiced efficiency. "I thought we should establish some basics, background information in case anyone asks questions." Marcus leaned back slightly, studying her with those steady brown eyes. "You've put thought into this." "I don't do anything without a plan." "I'm starting to see that." Victoria outlined her proposal. The wedding was 6 weeks away at Willow Creek Vineyard in Woodinville. Black tie optional. She'd cover any expenses for appropriate attire. All he had to do was show up, be polite, and help her get through one difficult evening. Marcus listened without interrupting. When she finished, he asked the question that mattered most. "Why me?" Victoria had prepared for this. She had a dozen reasonable answers ready. He seemed trustworthy. He clearly knew how to behave in social situations. He looked the part. Instead, the truth spilled out. "Because you'll leave." Anyone from my world would want something. Networking opportunities, business connections, an in with my company. Or they'd gossip, turn it into a story. But you have your own life, your daughter, your work. You don't need anything from me. After the wedding, we go back to being strangers. That's why. That's pretty cynical. That's realistic. Harper interrupted, looking up from her drawing. "Daddy, I like her. She has kind eyes." Both adults paused. Harper returned to coloring a sea turtle purple, oblivious to the weight her words carried. Marcus's expression softened. "If I do this, and I'm not saying I will, I'm not taking money. That would make me feel like an escort. If I agree, it's because I understand not wanting to face something painful alone. Not because you're paying me." Victoria felt something shift in her chest. "Okay, no money. And I won't pretend to be some corporate executive or wealthy businessman. I teach art at a community center. I make $40,000 a year. I do carpentry on the side to pay rent. If that embarrasses you at a fancy vineyard wedding, we should end this now." Victoria laughed, the first genuine one in weeks. "Honestly, that might be the most interesting thing about me at this wedding. Everyone else will discuss portfolios and vacation homes. You'll actually have something real to say." Marcus smiled slowly. "Okay then. I guess we're doing this." "We're doing this." Harper looked up again. "Daddy, who's this lady?" Marcus glanced at Victoria, a question in his eyes. She nodded. "This is Victoria, sweetheart. She's a new friend. We're helping her with something important." "Is she nice?" Victoria knelt to Harper's level, meeting the child's eyes directly. "I'm going to try to be." Harper considered this with 6-year-old gravity. "Okay. Do you like sea turtles?" "I do." "Good. This one's for you." Harper carefully tore the page from her coloring book, a sea turtle rendered in enthusiastic purple, and handed it to Victoria. Victoria accepted the drawing like it was a priceless artifact. "Thank you, Harper. I'll keep this somewhere special." "Promise?" "Promise." They met 3 more times over the following weeks to prepare. Each meeting revealed new layers, new complexities neither had anticipated. The first planning session happened at Pike Place Market on a Saturday morning. Marcus suggested it, public, neutral ground where they could practice looking comfortable together. The market teemed with weekend crowds. Fishmongers threw salmon across their stands, their practiced choreography drawing tourist applause. Flower vendors sold dahlias and sunflowers in riotous color. Street musicians played acoustic sets near Rachel the Pig, the bronze statue that greeted visitors at the main entrance. They walked slowly, maintaining careful distance. Victoria outlined their cover story. They'd met at the coffee shop 5 weeks prior, started talking, had been seeing each other casually since. Nothing serious yet, but promising. Marcus stopped at a produce stand, examining heirloom tomatoes with the focus most people reserved for diamonds. "What do you do for fun?" Victoria blinked. "I work, mostly. Go to the gym sometimes. Read industry publications." "That's work, not fun." "I used to go to museums, the Seattle Art Museum, Fry Art Museum, gallery shows in Pioneer Square." "Why'd you stop?" "There's always another meeting, another report, another crisis. Fun feels like a luxury I can't afford." Marcus selected 2 tomatoes, paid the vendor with cash from a worn leather wallet. "That sounds lonely." The observation landed with unexpected weight. Victoria found herself nodding. "It is." They continued through the market. Marcus told her about his work, custom furniture built with Pacific Northwest woods, black walnut for durability, alder for its color, cedar for its scent. About Sunday afternoons at Green Lake Park with Harper, about reading Charlotte's Web together each night, Harper's favorite part being when Charlotte writes "some pig" in her web. Victoria found herself genuinely interested. When had she last had a conversation that wasn't about logistics chains or profit margins? Near the original Starbucks, a woman recognized Victoria. "Ms. James, I read your interview in Seattle Business Journal. What your company's doing for pharmaceutical distribution is incredible." The woman gushed for 30 seconds before moving on, unaware of the bomb she'd just dropped. Marcus turned to Victoria slowly. "Cascade Logistics. I just Googled it. You're not some mid-level manager. You're the CEO." "I never said I wasn't." $180 million company. Victoria's cheeks warmed. Revenue, not profit. Still. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. "You let me think you were..." "What, normal?" "Someone who'd realistically need my help." "I do need your help. More than you know." They sat on a bench overlooking Elliott Bay, ferries crisscrossing the gray water. Victoria told him the truth about building her company from nothing 8 years ago, about maxing out credit cards and sleeping in her office, and living on terrible coffee from 7-Eleven, about landing her first major contract with REI and nearly killing herself to deliver it ahead of schedule and under budget, about how everyone said she'd fail. Too young, too inexperienced, too ambitious for a woman without connections, about proving them all wrong, then realizing her success had cost her everything else. Marcus listened without judgment, his carpenter's hands resting on his knees. When she finished, he asked, "Do you regret it?" "I regret losing Richard, or rather not realizing I was losing him until it was too late. But the company? I'm proud of what I built. 200 people have good jobs because I refused to quit. Vaccines reach patients safely because we're obsessive about temperature control. That matters." "It does matter." "I just wish I'd figured out how to have both." "Maybe you still can." The second meeting happened at Marcus's workshop in Georgetown, an industrial Seattle neighborhood south of downtown. His workspace occupied a converted garage, sawdust coating every surface. The smell of cedar and walnut hung thick in the air. Victoria watched him work on a dining table for a family in Ballard. Cherry wood with walnut inlay, each joint fitted with precision that spoke of years perfecting his craft. His hands moved with confidence, measuring and marking and cutting. He wore a flannel shirt, sleeves rolled up, safety goggles perched on his forehead. "You're an artist." Marcus shook his head, continuing to sand a curved edge. "I'm a craftsman. There's a difference. Artists create to express. Craftsmen create to serve. I want my pieces used, lived with. I want families to eat dinner at my tables and make memories around them." He straightened, brushing sawdust from his jeans. "There's something about taking raw wood from Washington forests and turning it into something useful and beautiful. It reminds me that everything has potential. It just takes someone willing to put in the work to see it." The words settled over Victoria like a blanket. She thought about pharmaceutical logistics, about building systems that saved lives. Maybe their work wasn't so different after all. Harper burst through the door, her grandmother trailing behind with an apologetic smile. "Sorry, Marcus, doctor's appointment ran short." Harper ran straight to Victoria. "You came! I drew something special for you." She produced her sketchbook, pages filled with ocean creatures, an octopus with 8 carefully rendered arms, a sea turtle gliding through waves, an orca, Puget Sound's most famous resident, breaching in magnificent black and white. "These are amazing, Harper. Why sea creatures?" Harper's expression turned serious. "Because they're mysterious, and nobody understands them completely. But they're still wonderful." Victoria glanced at Marcus, finding him watching her with an expression that made her pulse quicken. "Your daughter's very smart." "Yeah, scares me sometimes how much like me she is." Marcus cleared his throat. "We should probably practice the physical proximity thing. At the wedding, we'll need to look comfortable together." They sat on a workbench, Harper humming to herself as she reorganized sawdust into patterns. Classic rock played softly from a radio, KEXP, Seattle's independent station. Marcus held out his hand, palm up, calloused from woodworking, paint stains under the nails, strong and real, and nothing like the manicured hands of men in Victoria's professional world. She placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid. Electricity ran through Victoria's body, unexpected and undeniable. This was supposed to be practice, clinical, professional. It felt like anything but. "This okay?" His voice had dropped lower. "Yes, this is okay." They sat like that for several minutes, not talking, just existing together while Harper sang and the afternoon light slanted through dusty windows. Victoria couldn't remember the last time she'd simply sat with someone without feeling the need to fill silence with conversation or check her phone or plan the next agenda item. Marcus's thumb traced small circles on her palm, possibly unconscious, possibly not. "Victoria." He said her name like it mattered. "When we walk into that wedding, I won't be thinking about Richard or his new wife or any of those people. I'll be thinking about making sure you feel supported, reminding you that you're worth more than whatever judgment they're passing." Victoria's throat tightened. "Why do you care? Why does this matter to you?" "Because I know what it's like to have someone make you believe you're not enough. And I know how hard it is to shake that off. If I can help you shake it off even a little bit, then this matters." Harper interrupted by running over with another drawing. 3 stick figures holding hands. A tall woman in a dress, a medium man in a suit, a small girl in the middle. Written in shaky letters, "Marcus, Harper, Victoria. Our maybe family." Hearts drawn around them in red crayon. An orca swimming nearby because, of course, there was. "This is for you." Harper pressed the paper into Victoria's hands. "Just in case you decide you like Daddy, so you know you have a place." Victoria's chest felt too tight. She looked at Marcus, who seemed equally overwhelmed. "I'll keep this very safe." "In your office?" "Right next to the sea turtle." Their third meeting happened at a mid-range Italian restaurant Marcus chose. Neutral territory, he'd said. somewhere they could practice conversation without Harper's delightful interruptions. Over pasta and red wine, they traded deeper truths. Victoria told him about Richard's accusations. Too cold, too focused, too ambitious. How she'd internalized those criticisms, believed them to be objective fact rather than one man's inability to handle a successful partner. Marcus told her about Sarah leaving when Harper was 2, about the note on the kitchen counter explaining she wasn't built for motherhood, needed to find herself in Los Angeles, couldn't bear the weight of a child's needs, about the months of self-doubt that followed, wondering if he'd been too boring, too conventional, too content with a simple life.
What changed? Victoria asked.
Harper. She was 2.5 when she told me she loved me all the way to the moon and back. And I realized Sarah's leaving had nothing to do with my worth as a person or a father. She needed something I couldn't give her, and that was okay. Painful, but okay. He leaned forward. I think Richard's the same. He told you that you were too ambitious because your ambition made him uncomfortable. Not because ambition is wrong, because he needed someone who made him feel bigger, and your success made him feel small. You barely know him. I know the type. I've met plenty of men who need their partners smaller so they can feel larger. Victoria set down her wine glass. That's the kindest thing anyone said to me in months. It's also true. Walking to their cars afterward, Marcus paused. Same time next week? The wedding's in 5 days. I meant after. Maybe we could still get coffee? Not because of our arrangement, just because I'd like to. Victoria's heart stuttered. This was supposed to be temporary, clean, simple. I'd like that too. The night before the wedding, Victoria stood in her closet staring at the navy dress she'd chosen, elegant without trying too hard, sophisticated without appearing desperate. Her phone showed 10:17 p.m. She'd been standing here for 20 minutes. The invitation sat on her dresser, mocking her. Tomorrow she'd walk into Willow Creek Vineyard and face everyone who'd watched her relationship with Richard implode. Face Patricia Ashford's pitying smile. Face the whispers about poor Victoria, so successful in business, such a failure at love. Her hand started shaking again. She called Marcus without planning to, the need to hear his voice overriding her usual control. Hello? He sounded alert despite the late hour. I'm sorry to bother you. I don't think I can do this. What happened? Nothing happened. That's the problem. I'm standing here realizing that tomorrow I'm going to walk into that vineyard and everyone will know. They'll know I'm performing, that I had to... She stopped herself before saying, hire you. You didn't hire me. His voice stayed gentle. We're friends, helping each other. We've known each other 6 weeks. And in those 6 weeks, I've learned more about you than some people learn about friends they've had for years. I know you keep Harper's sea turtle drawing in your office. I know you drink coffee black because you learned to during all-nighters building your company. I know you're terrified Patricia Hartford will confirm every awful thing you believe about yourself. He paused. And I know you're brave enough to walk in there anyway. Victoria's eyes burned. What if I'm making a mistake? What if this makes everything worse? Then we leave. The second you want to go, we go. You don't owe anyone your discomfort, Victoria. Not Richard, not his mother, not anyone. The tightness in her chest eased slightly. Thank you for doing this, for understanding. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, you're going to be magnificent. After she hung up, Victoria stood in the dark of her penthouse, looking out at the Seattle skyline. Space Needle lit up. Ferris wheel glowing on the waterfront. Mount Rainier invisible in the night, But she knew it was there, solid and permanent. She'd built a company from nothing. Surely she could survive one wedding. Marcus couldn't sleep. He sat in Harper's room, watching his daughter sprawl across her twin bed, one arm flung over her stuffed orca. Her nightlight cast gentle shadows on walls covered with her artwork, sea creatures in every color imaginable. What was he doing? Victoria James was CEO of a $180 million company. She lived in a world of boardrooms and quarterly earnings and decisions that affected hundreds of lives. He built furniture in a converted garage and made $42,000 a year. Tomorrow he'd walk into a vineyard wedding full of investment bankers and corporate lawyers, wearing his one good suit, and pretend to be someone a woman like Victoria would date. The fear wasn't about being judged by wealthy strangers. He'd survived worse. The fear was that somewhere in the past 6 weeks, this stopped being a favor and became something real. He remembered Sarah's note, remembered the crushing certainty that he wasn't enough to make her stay, remembered rebuilding himself piece by piece until he could look in the mirror without shame. Victoria triggered those old wounds, that old fear. Not because she was cruel, she was anything but. Because caring about her meant risking rejection again. Meant possibly teaching Harper that people leave. But Victoria wasn't running. She was walking straight into her fear, head high. He could do the same. Harper stirred, blinking awake. "Daddy? Why aren't you sleeping?" "Just thinking, sweetheart." "About the fancy party?" "Yeah." Harper sat up, rubbing her eyes. "Are you nervous?" Marcus decided on honesty. "A little." "Because Victoria's pretty and you like her?" He stopped breathing. "What makes you think I like her?" Harper yawned. "You smile different when you talk about her. Not the fake smile you do for teachers. The real one." When had his 6-year-old become so perceptive? Marcus sat on the edge of her bed. "Can I tell you something grown up?" "Okay." Sometimes adults get scared of feeling things because they've been hurt before. Victoria's been hurt. She thinks she's too difficult to love. And I'm scared that if I care about her, I might get hurt too. Harper considered this with the gravity of a philosopher. "But you're already scared, so you might as well see if you like her. That's what you tell me about swimming lessons." Marcus laughed, the sound surprised out of him. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just forget because I spill things." Harper ran to her room, returning with the Maybe Family drawing she'd given Victoria. "I made an extra one, for you. So you remember you already decided she might be family." Marcus looked at the stick figures holding hands, the orca swimming nearby, the hearts drawn with fierce concentration. "Thank you, baby girl. I'll keep this in my pocket tomorrow. For courage." Harper crawled back into bed. "Tell Victoria I said good luck." "I will." Marcus folded the drawing carefully and placed it in his suit jacket pocket. Tomorrow, he'd carry it like a talisman, a reminder that courage looked like a 6-year-old girl who believed in maybe families. The morning arrived too quickly. Marcus dressed in his charcoal suit, the one he'd worn to his college graduation and Harper's baptism, and exactly 2 job interviews. He'd had it dry cleaned yesterday. It fit well enough, if a little outdated and cut. Harper insisted on helping with his tie, her small fingers surprisingly deft. "You look handsome, Daddy." "Thank you, sweetheart. You be good for Grandma today." "I will. Tell Victoria I hope she has fun." Marcus kissed the top of her head, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. Whatever happened today, this mattered more. This anchor. This love that asked nothing except that he show up. Victoria stood in her bathroom, applying makeup with precision learned from years of important meetings. Not too much, just enough to look polished without appearing like she'd tried too hard. The navy dress fit perfectly, elegant without being flashy, expensive without screaming designer label. She looked like a woman who had her life together. The lie was so complete, it almost convinced her. Her phone buzzed. "Marcus, I'm downstairs whenever you're ready. No rush." Victoria grabbed her clutch, gave herself one final look in the mirror, and headed down to face whatever this day would bring. Marcus stood beside his Honda Civic, 10 years old but well-maintained, looking uncomfortable in his suit. When he saw her step out of the building, his expression shifted to something she couldn't quite name. "You look like you're going to war." Victoria managed a small smile. "Isn't that what this is?" "Then I guess it's good you brought backup." He opened the passenger door for her. Such a small gesture, but it made Victoria's throat tight. The drive to Woodinville took 40 minutes, winding through neighborhoods that grew progressively wealthier. Manicured lawns, gates, houses that called themselves estates without irony. Marcus's Honda looked increasingly out of place among the Teslas and BMWs crowding Willow Creek Vineyard's parking area. He found a spot in the back row and turned off the engine. "Ready?" Victoria stared at the elegant buildings ahead, at guests already mingling on the terrace in their designer clothes and practiced smiles. Everything in her wanted to tell Marcus to drive away, to pretend this day didn't exist. Instead, she thought about Harper's drawing, about the purple sea turtle, about Marcus's steady presence beside her. "I'm ready." They walked toward the venue hand in hand, and for the first time in 9 months, Victoria didn't feel completely alone. The ceremony space stretched across manicured lawns overlooking vineyard rows that marched toward distant hills. White chairs arranged in perfect arcs faced an arbor dripping with roses and peonies. Guests clustered in expensive fabrics, their laughter carrying the particular pitch of people who'd never worried about money. Patricia Ashford stood near the entrance like a sentry guarding a kingdom. She spotted Victoria immediately, her eyes widening a fraction before her expression smoothed into practiced pleasantness, the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. Victoria's entire body tensed. Marcus felt it through their joined hands and squeezed gently. "Breathe. I'm right here." Patricia approached with the measured steps of someone used to others clearing her path. 61, but maintained to look 50, wearing a champagne-colored suit that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month. Her gray hair swept into an elegant chignon. Diamonds at her throat caught the afternoon light. "Victoria! How unexpected to see you here." The words dripped with subtext. "I hoped you wouldn't come." "I wasn't certain you'd attend." Victoria's voice emerged, steady, professional. "Patricia, you look well. Beautiful venue." Patricia's gaze shifted to Marcus with the clinical assessment of someone appraising livestock, taking in his off-the-rack suit, his carpenter's hands, his lack of designer accessories. "And who is this?" "This is Marcus Reed. Marcus, Patricia Ashford, Richard's mother." Marcus extended his hand with easy confidence, no deference, no apology for being exactly who he was. "Mrs. Ashford, your son has excellent taste in venues." Patricia's handshake lasted exactly 1 second. "How lovely. And what is it you do, Mr. Reed?" The test. The sorting mechanism. The question designed to categorize and dismiss. Marcus didn't flinch. "I'm a custom furniture maker. Build dining tables, bedroom sets, cabinets. Also teach art part-time at Beacon Community Center in South Seattle." Patricia's smile sharpened like a blade being honed. "How quaint. I'm sure that keeps you busy." "It does, but I always make time for what matters, like being here with Victoria today. The deliberate emphasis on Victoria's name landed like a statement. He was here for her, not the social climbing or networking or any other reason Patricia might assume. Patricia's expression flickered: surprise, irritation, recalculation. Yes, well, how nice that Victoria found someone to accompany her. I do hope you both enjoy the ceremony. If you'll excuse me, I should check on seating arrangements. She swept away, leaving a wake of expensive perfume and unspoken judgment. Victoria exhaled slowly. That was brutal. That was her trying to make you feel small. Marcus kept his voice low, gentle. Did it work? Victoria considered. A year ago, even 6 months ago, Patricia's dismissal would have cut deep. But standing here with Marcus, who'd met the snobbery with calm honesty, she felt something different. Anger. No. Actually, no. Good. Now let's find our seats and get through this ceremony. They discovered their assigned places 8 rows back, a deliberate slight from Patricia, relegating Victoria to the lesser guests. Marcus guided her down the aisle, his hand steady at the small of her back. The view was better from here anyway. They could observe without being constantly observed. Watch the performance from a safe distance. Marcus leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. That guy in row 3? His tie costs more than my rent. The woman in row 5 is wearing a hat that looks like a small bird died on it. Is it dead or just sleeping? Victoria bit back a laugh, tension easing from her shoulders. Marcus had this gift, finding absurdity in situations designed to intimidate, deflating pretension with observation. The wedding party began their procession. Richard's groomsmen in matching tuxedos, their swagger identical. Investment bankers and corporate lawyers, men who'd never questioned their right to occupy space. Melissa's bridesmaids followed in pale pink, their spray tans uniform. Instagram influencers and wellness entrepreneurs, women whose careers depended on appearing effortlessly perfect. Then Richard appeared at the altar. Victoria braced for the impact: jealousy, regret, the ghost of love that refused to die. She prepared for this moment, rehearsed her emotional defenses, but watching Richard take his place, handsome and polished and completely unchanged, she felt only distant recognition. That was a man she used to know, a life she used to want. Not anymore. Marcus's hand found hers under the ceremony program. You okay? She turned to look at him. This man who'd spent weeks helping her prepare for this day, who'd defended her to his face without hesitation, who looked at her like she was worth defending. I'm better than okay. I'm free. Music swelled. Melissa appeared at the end of the aisle, a vision in lace and tulle. Beautiful, radiant, everything Patricia had wanted for her son. The ceremony proceeded with expected beats, traditional vows, exchange of rings, Richard's voice carrying across the garden as he promised forever to someone else. Victoria focused on Marcus's thumb tracing circles on her palm, on the warmth of him beside her, on the realization that she didn't want Richard's forever anymore, didn't want the version of herself she'd had to become to fit into his world. The officiant pronounced them married. Applause rippled through the guests. Richard kissed Melissa with practiced romance, and Victoria felt nothing except relief. She'd survived the ceremony. Now came the harder part, the reception, where Patricia would have hours to inflict damage with surgical precision. Guests began moving toward the terrace where cocktail hour awaited. Marcus helped Victoria stand, his hand at her elbow. Halfway done. The worst is still coming. Then we'll handle it together. The terrace overlooked vineyard rows stretching toward the Cascade foothills. Servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that looked too artistic to eat. Conversation hummed with the particular energy of people networking while pretending to celebrate. A couple in their early 40s approached, the woman's smile sharp with curiosity, the man's expression calculatingly friendly. "Sophia, we weren't sure you'd actually come." The woman's voice pitched bright with false warmth. "How brave of you." Brave meaning pathetic. Brave meaning desperate. Victoria recognized them, Derek and Vanessa Chen, college friends of Richard who'd chosen sides in the breakup without hesitation. "Vanessa, Derek, good to see you both." Vanessa's eyes immediately locked onto Marcus, cataloging his clothes, his posture, his obvious difference from their usual crowd. "And who is this?" "Marcus Reed. Marcus, Derek, and Vanessa Chen." Marcus shook their hands with the same easy confidence he'd shown Patricia. Derek's smile widened. "What do you do, Marcus?" The question again. The sorting mechanism. The way to determine worth through occupation and salary. "I build custom furniture. Dining tables, bedroom sets, anything clients need. Also teach art to kids at a community center." Vanessa's recalculation was almost visible. Single income, blue-collar work, clearly not from their social stratum. "How sweet." The condescension dripped like honey over poison. "That must be fulfilling." Marcus's expression didn't shift. "It is. I build things that last, that families use for generations. There's real satisfaction in creating something beautiful with your hands." Derek jumped in, oblivious to undercurrents. "How did you two meet?" "Coffee shop." Marcus's version flowed naturally. "Victoria's shoes got destroyed by orange juice, courtesy of my daughter, who's 6 and still working on coordination. Felt obligated to make sure she survived the trauma." Derek laughed, genuine this time. "That's actually a great story. Better than the usual 'we matched on an app' thing everyone says now. My daughter has excellent taste in who to spill things on." Vanessa couldn't help herself. "You have a daughter? How sweet." Her tone suggested complications rather than charm. Marcus met her gaze directly. "I do. Harper's 6. Obsessed with sea creatures, and the best thing that ever happened to me. Being her father taught me more about what matters than any career could." The words landed with quiet force, not defensive, not apologetic, simply true. Derek shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa's smile tightened. "Well, we should mingle." "Lovely to meet you, Marcus." Vanessa's dismissal was absolute. They drifted away, already whispering to each other. Victoria could imagine the conversation. Where did she find him? A carpenter? With a kid? Poor Victoria, settling for whoever would have her. But Marcus remained unbothered, selecting a canapé from a passing server with genuine interest. "This is actually pretty good. What is it?" "Smoked salmon on cucumber with creme fraiche." "Fancy." He ate it in one bite, completely at ease in a situation designed to make him uncomfortable. More encounters followed, each a variation on the same theme. Richard's college roommate who asked about Marcus's golf handicap, shocked when Marcus admitted he didn't golf. A hedge fund manager who patronizingly explained that carpentry was honest work. A tech executive's wife who suggested Victoria must be so relieved to be dating again. Through it all, Marcus remained steady, not trying to impress, not apologizing for who he was, just existing with the kind of confidence that came from knowing his worth had nothing to do with their approval. Victoria watched him deflect condescension with honesty, meet judgment with calm truth, and slowly began to see him differently. Not as a favor she'd asked, but as someone genuinely remarkable. Then Patricia found them again. She approached with 3 other women, all from her generation, all wearing expressions of polite cruelty. Society wives who'd perfected the art of destroying reputations over cocktails. "Victoria, darling, come join us. We were just discussing the wedding plans." Trap. Victoria knew it immediately. But refusing would confirm weakness, so she stepped into the circle with Marcus at her side. Patricia's friend, a woman whose name Victoria couldn't remember but whose judgment was legendary, smiled with saccharine sweetness. "Patricia tells us you run a little logistics company?" Little. The diminishment intentional. Victoria's voice stayed level. "Cascade Logistics Solutions. We specialize in pharmaceutical cold chain management. We had $180 million in revenue last year." "How impressive! You must work such long hours." Translation: no work-life balance. No wonder Richard left. Another woman chimed in. "It's wonderful that you're so successful professionally, though I do sometimes wonder if modern women forget that career success doesn't necessarily translate to personal fulfillment." The cruelty wrapped in concern. The suggestion that Victoria's achievements meant nothing without a husband and children. Patricia moved in for the kill, her voice honey-sweet. "Richard always said you were brilliant at business, just not quite as gifted at the softer aspects of life. Connection, warmth, being present for the people you love." Repeating Richard's private criticisms in public. Confirming his narrative. Establishing that Victoria's failures were her own fault. Victoria's face remained impassive, but Marcus felt her hand tremble in his, saw the flash of pain in her eyes before she buried it under professional composure. "Enough." "Mrs. Ashford," Marcus's voice cut through the polite cruelty without rising in volume. "I'm going to respectfully disagree." The circle of women turned to him with expressions of surprise. Men didn't interrupt their conversations, especially men of Marcus's obvious class. He continued, unbothered by their stares. "Victoria's capacity for connection is extraordinary. She listens when people talk, really listens, not just waits for her turn to speak. She shows up for people who matter to her, even when it's difficult." His eyes found Patricia's. "Like being here today, at a wedding that must be painful because she refuses to hide or make excuses for who she is." The terrace had gone quiet, nearby conversations pausing as people turned to watch. Marcus wasn't done. "And she's present in ways that count. Not performative presence where you show up but don't engage. Genuine investment in relationships, in work that matters, in building something real." He paused, letting the words settle. The fact that Richard couldn't recognize that says more about his limitations than hers. He needed someone who made him feel bigger. Victoria's success made him feel small. That's not her failure, that's his. Gasps from the society wives. Patricia's face frozen in fury disguised as shock. "Well?" Patricia's voice could have frozen wine in the glass. "I see Victoria has found someone willing to defend her." "I defend people who deserve it." Victoria's hand tightened on Marcus's, not pulling him away, anchoring him there. "We should find our table for dinner." They walked away from Patricia's circle, conversations resuming in urgent whispers behind them. Victoria didn't speak until they were halfway across the terrace. "You just made a speech at my ex-boyfriend's wedding, defending my right to be ambitious." "I did." "Patricia Ashford is going to murder you." "She can try." Victoria stopped walking, turning to face him fully. The afternoon sun caught in her dark hair highlighted the mix of emotions crossing her face. Gratitude, wonder, something deeper she couldn't name yet. "Thank you for seeing me, for not letting her diminish me." Marcus's expression softened. You're not someone who can be diminished. Only people who don't understand you would try. Around them, the wedding continued, guests finding their assigned tables, servers preparing for dinner service. But in this moment, Victoria felt something shift between them. The careful distance they'd maintained crumbling under the weight of what they were becoming to each other. When did this stop being fake for you? The question escaped before she could stop it. This arrangement, when did it become real? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching hers. Probably when you spent 45 minutes genuinely interested in Harper's theories about sea creatures. Or maybe before that, when you told me about building your company and I saw the passion in your face. Or maybe the moment you asked me to do this and I said yes, because even then I knew you were someone I wanted to know better. Victoria's breath caught. Marcus, I know that's not the agreement. I know you asked me because I was supposed to disappear after today, but I can't pretend I want to go back to being strangers. Before Victoria could respond, a voice interrupted. Victoria. She turned to find Richard standing 3 feet away, alone, apparently having escaped his own reception. He looked older up close, tired beneath the polished exterior. Richard, congratulations. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. Melissa sent a lovely invitation. Awkward silence settled between them. Marcus started to step away, giving them privacy, but Victoria's hand tightened on his. Stay. Richard's eyes moved to Marcus, assessment clear in his gaze. And you are? Marcus Reed. The new boyfriend? Someone who cares about Victoria very much. Richard nodded slowly, something unreadable crossing his face. I owe you an apology, Victoria, for how I ended things. What I said about you being cold, that was cruel and inaccurate. You weren't cold. You were focused, driven, passionate about your work. I just wasn't secure enough in myself to handle being with someone whose ambition matched their talent. The apology landed with unexpected weight. Words Victoria had waited 9 months to hear, now arriving when she no longer needed them. Thank you for saying that. You deserve to be happy. I hope you know that. Victoria looked at Marcus, at this man who'd spent weeks proving exactly that truth. I'm starting to. Richard returned to his wedding. Marcus and Victoria stood in the fading afternoon light. Everything between them changed, and changing still. Dinner service began with the precision of military operation. Victoria and Marcus found their assigned table with other B-list guests, Richard's distant cousins, college acquaintances who hadn't made the inner circle, the kind of people invited out of obligation rather than affection. The older woman across from them, someone's aunt, Victoria thought, leaned forward with wine-loosened curiosity. So, how serious are you two? Victoria had prepared for this. We've been seeing each other about 6 weeks, still getting to know each other. Sophia, I remember when you and Richard were together. The woman's tone carried no malice, just observation. You always seemed so focused on work. Has that changed? The question wasn't meant to wound, but it echoed Richard's accusations too perfectly. Marcus answered before Victoria could, his voice firm without being harsh. Victoria is still focused on her work, and it's one of the things I admire most about her. She built something remarkable from nothing, created 200 jobs, solved real problems in pharmaceutical distribution, made genuine impact. Why would I want her to change that? The woman blinked, clearly unprepared for that response. Marcus continued. I know what you meant. You meant that successful women should probably tone it down if they want to keep a man interested. But that's not how real partnership works. In real partnership, both people celebrate each other's successes instead of feeling threatened by them. Silence rippled across their section of the table. The aunt's husband cleared his throat. He's got a point, dear. Conversation resumed with careful avoidance of further personal questions. Under the table, Victoria found Marcus's hand and squeezed hard. That was probably too much. Sorry if I overstepped. That was perfect. No one's ever defended me like that. Then you've been surrounded by the wrong people. The speeches began as dessert arrived. Richard's best man delivered a humorous but heartfelt toast about college adventures and adult responsibilities. Melissa's maid of honor shared sweet stories about their friendship and Melissa's kindness. Then Patricia Ashford stood. Victoria's entire body went rigid. Marcus felt it and shifted closer, his shoulder pressed against hers. Patricia's speech started conventionally enough. Richard's childhood achievements, her pride in the man he'd become, welcoming Melissa to the family with warmth she'd never shown Victoria. Then the knife twisted. Richard has had quite a journey to reach this day. Patricia's voice carried perfectly across the reception. There were times, difficult times, when we worried he might not find someone who truly understood what it means to build a life together. Her eyes found Victoria in the crowd, deliberate, cruel. You see, some people confuse ambition with connection. They believe professional success can substitute for emotional intimacy, that being impressive is the same as being present, that achievement is more important than love. Guests shifted uncomfortably. Those who knew the history recognized the target. But Melissa has shown Richard what real partnership looks like. Two people who prioritize each other, who understand that some accomplishments matter more than quarterly reports or board meetings. The message was crystal clear. Victoria had failed where Melissa succeeded. Victoria had chosen wrong, valued wrong, been fundamentally wrong. Victoria's face burned, every eye in the room gauging her reaction. This was Patricia's final victory. Public confirmation that Victoria was the problem, that her ambition made her unlovable. Marcus's hand covered hers on the table, then he stood. Every head turned, conversations died mid-word. If I could add something, his voice calm, carrying clearly through the sudden silence. Patricia's expression flickered between surprise and fury. I believe the family speeches are... I'll be brief. The room held its breath. This was a breach of wedding etiquette, but curiosity won over propriety. Marcus looked at Patricia, then at the assembled guests, then at Victoria. When he spoke, his words carried weight that had nothing to do with volume. I'm not family, so I don't have the same history with Richard that everyone here shares. But I do know something about what makes a good partnership. He paused, letting the silence deepen. A good partnership isn't about two people walking the same path at the same pace. It's about two people choosing to walk together, even when their paths are different, even when their pace doesn't match. It's about celebrating each other's successes instead of requiring them to shrink. His eyes found Patricia's. It's about understanding that ambition and love aren't opposites. They're both expressions of passion, of caring deeply about something. A person who builds a company that employs 200 people, that ensures life-saving medications reach patients safely, that person isn't choosing work over love. They're demonstrating love for their community, their employees, the strangers whose lives depend on their precision. The reception was utterly silent now. Even the servers had stopped moving. Marcus continued, his voice steady. I'm grateful Richard and Melissa found each other, that they've built a partnership that works for them. But I'm also grateful that sometimes relationships end because they make room for better matches. For people who see each other's drive as strength, not deficiency. For people who understand you don't have to choose between building something meaningful in your work and building something meaningful in your life. For people who know that being told you're too much just means you haven't found someone who can handle everything you are. His eyes locked on Victoria's. And Victoria James is not too much. She's exactly enough. for someone brave enough to meet her where she stands. He sat down. The room erupted, some applause genuine and growing stronger, some scandalized whispers, some shocked silence. Patricia's face had frozen into a mask that couldn't quite hide her rage. Richard looked uncomfortable, embarrassed. Melissa, surprisingly, was smiling. Victoria stared at Marcus, tears threatening, her throat too tight for words. Around them, the wedding continued, but in this moment, nothing existed except the two of them and the truth he'd just spoken for everyone to hear. Without planning it, without calculating the optics or considering the audience, Victoria leaned in and kissed him. Not for show, not for Patricia or Richard or the gossips who'd be discussing this for months. For herself. For Marcus. For the man who'd stood up in a room full of strangers and refused to let her be diminished. The kiss was soft, brief, but completely real. When she pulled back, Marcus's eyes had darkened with something that had nothing to do with their arrangement. "We should probably talk about that." Victoria's voice emerged barely above a whisper. "Later, after we survive the rest of this reception." "Victoria, you just made a speech defending me at my ex-boyfriend's wedding. The least I can do is kiss you properly." A smile tugged at Marcus's mouth, despite the gravity of what had just happened. That was properly? That was a preview. The reception slowly resumed normal volume. Conversation started again, carefully avoiding their corner of the room. But Victoria caught Melissa's eye across the space, and Richard's new wife offered a small, genuine smile and a subtle nod of approval. They stayed another hour out of politeness, though Victoria would have happily left immediately. More guests approached with thinly veiled curiosity about Marcus's speech. Some were genuinely supportive, others clearly fishing for gossip to spread later. Marcus handled all of it with the same unflappable calm, never apologizing, never backing down from what he'd said. Finally, as the sun set over the vineyard and the band began playing romantic standards, Victoria touched Marcus's arm. "Can we leave?" "You sure? It's only 8. I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go somewhere quiet where we can actually talk about what just happened." Marcus stood immediately, offering his hand. "Then let's go." They made their way toward the parking area, deliberately avoiding the main reception path. But as they passed through the garden, they encountered Richard standing alone near the rose arbor, apparently taking a break from his own celebration. He saw them and hesitated, clearly debating whether to speak. Then he stepped forward. "Victoria, I'm glad you came." Victoria's voice stayed neutral. "Congratulations, Richard. Melissa seems wonderful." "She is." He paused, struggling with words. "I owe you more than just an apology for calling you cold. I owe you an apology for making you believe your strength was a weakness. Your focus wasn't the problem. My insecurity was." The admission cost him something. Victoria could see it in his face. "Thank you for saying that." Richard's eyes moved to Marcus. "He seems good for you. Different from what I expected." "He is good for me. Better than I knew I deserved." "You deserve to be happy, Victoria. I mean that." "I'm starting to believe it." Richard returned to his wedding. Victoria and Marcus walked to the parking lot in silence, processing the day's emotional whiplash. At Marcus's Honda, he paused before opening her door. "That was a lot." "That was everything." Victoria leaned against the car, suddenly exhausted. "You defended me to Patricia. You made a speech in front of 100 people. You let me kiss you in the middle of a wedding reception. To be fair, you kissed me. I just didn't object." Despite everything, Victoria laughed. No, you didn't object. Marcus stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her face with surprising gentleness. Victoria, I need you to know something. When I said those things in my speech about you being exactly enough, I meant every word. Not for the performance, not to win points with you or anyone else, because it's true. I know, her voice caught. That's what scares me. What scares you? That I'm starting to believe it. That I want this to be real. That I don't want you to disappear after today. Marcus's thumb traced her cheekbone, a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. I'm not going anywhere. Unless you want me to. I don't want you to. But I don't know how to do this. Be with someone without making the same mistakes. I'm still the person who works 60-hour weeks, who gets calls at midnight about distribution emergencies, who might disappoint you the way I disappointed Richard. You didn't disappoint Richard. You outgrew him. There's a difference. Marcus's other hand found her waist, steadying her. And I'm not asking you to change. I'm asking if you want to try building something together. Something that doesn't require you to be smaller, or quieter, or less ambitious. Something where we both show up as exactly who we are and figure out how to make it work. Victoria looked up at him, this man who'd entered her life through spilled orange juice and chaos, who'd become essential without her realizing when it happened. I want to try. I'm terrified, but I want to try. Then we'll try together. He kissed her then, properly this time. Not the brief preview from the reception, but something deeper, slower, weighted with promise and possibility. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, the sun had fully set. The vineyard's lights twinkled in the gathering dark. Take me home. Victoria's voice emerged rough. Yours or mine, I don't care. Just somewhere we can be ourselves without performing for anyone. Marcus opened her car door. Mine. Harper's with her grandmother overnight. We'll have privacy. They drove through the darkening countryside, hands linked across the console. The wedding behind them, the future uncertain but no longer terrifying, just full of possibility neither had expected to find. Marcus's apartment occupied the third floor of an older building in Georgetown, the kind with creaky stairs and neighbors who knew each other's names. Victoria followed him up, her heels clicking against worn wood, feeling the weight of the day settle into her bones. The space was exactly what she'd expected. Modest two-bedroom, lived in rather than decorated. Harper's artwork covered every available wall surface. Sea creatures in crayon, watercolor oceans, construction paper collages of kelp forests. A bulletin board overflowed with her drawings. Rain boots abandoned by the door, sized for a 6-year-old. Sorry about the mess. Marcus gathered scattered art supplies from the couch. Harper and I did a painting project this morning. Didn't have time to clean before we left. Don't apologize. This is perfect. It's real. Marcus poured them each a glass of wine, nothing expensive, just something drinkable from a corner store. They settled on the couch with careful distance between them, the apartment quiet except for distant traffic sounds and someone's television through the walls. So, Marcus turned to face her. We probably should actually talk about what happened back there. Victoria took a sip of wine, gathering thoughts scattered by the day's emotional turbulence. You made a speech defending me to a room full of strangers. You held my hand through the entire ceremony. You told Patricia Ashford that loving my career is something you admire about me. She paused, the weight of that word settling between them again. You used the word admire. Did you mean it? Or was it part of the performance? Marcus set his wine glass down carefully. I stopped performing about 2 weeks ago, maybe earlier. The truth is, I agreed to this because I understood not wanting to face something painful alone. But somewhere between duck ponds and art shows and watching you be brave even when you were terrified, this stopped being about the wedding and started being about you. Victoria's heart hammered against her ribs. I don't know how to do this. Richard was my only serious relationship, and I clearly failed at it. What if I make all the same mistakes? What if my work schedule is too demanding, or I forget important things, or I'm not present enough? Then we'll figure it out together. Marcus reached for her hand. Victoria, look at me. She met his eyes. I'm not Richard. I'm not going to ask you to be less than you are. I'm not intimidated by your success or threatened by your ambition. What I am is interested in building something with you that works for both of us, even if it doesn't look like anyone else's relationship. What would that even look like? You have Harper's schedule, I have board meetings and investor calls. Some weeks I work 60 hours. The same way we've been doing it. His thumb traced circles on her palm. We find the moments that matter and we show up for them. Maybe we can't have dinner together every night, but we can have Sunday park days. Maybe you can't always be at Harper's bedtime, but when you can be, you're fully present. Maybe I can't attend every one of your work events, but when you need someone in your corner, I'm there. Victoria felt tears threaten and blinked them back. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. It's actually really complicated. But I think it's worth it. She kissed him then, setting her wine aside and closing the distance between them. This kiss, different from the preview at the wedding, deeper, slower, weighted with intention rather than impulse. Marcus's hand came up to cradle her face, his carpenter's fingers gentle against her skin. When they finally broke apart, both breathing harder, he rested his forehead against hers. Stay tonight. Not for anything except being together. I just want to wake up knowing you're here. I'd like that. They talked until past midnight, curled together on his worn couch, about fears and hopes and the messy reality of trying to build something new. Marcus told her about turning down job opportunities that would have paid better but required sacrificing time with Harper. Victoria confessed her terror of becoming her mother, successful in career, but divorced and lonely at 60. Eventually, they moved to his bedroom, both too exhausted for anything except sleep. Victoria borrowed one of his t-shirts, soft from years of washing. They lay facing each other in the dark, hands clasped between them. Thank you. Victoria's voice emerged barely above a whisper. For today. For defending me. For seeing me. Always. She fell asleep listening to his breathing, feeling safer than she had in years. The following weeks unfolded with unexpected ease. They fell into rhythms. Sunday park days with Harper became sacred time Victoria protected fiercely from work encroachment. Wednesday dinners when Harper stayed with her grandmother. Stolen hours between meetings and carpentry projects and the ordinary chaos of their separate lives. Victoria launched her women's mentorship program at Cascade Logistics, integrating it into professional development exactly as Marcus had suggested. 10 young women selected for the first cohort, all hungry to learn from someone who'd built success without connections or inherited wealth. The first session happened on a Wednesday evening. Victoria stood before her mentees, seeing herself at their age, ambitious, driven, terrified of failure. Over the next 6 months, we'll talk about building careers, navigating male-dominated industries, developing leadership skills. But we're also going to talk about something equally important: how to build a life alongside your career, how to define success on your own terms, how to resist the false choice between ambition and humanity. One of the young women raised her hand tentatively. Is it true you started this program after attending your ex-boyfriend's wedding? Victoria smiled. It is. I went to that wedding convinced I'd failed because I'd chosen my career over my relationship. But what I learned is that I hadn't failed. I'd just been with someone who wanted me to be smaller than I was capable of being. She thought about Marcus, about his speech, about the way he'd reframed her entire narrative. The right person doesn't ask you to choose. They help you figure out how to have both. Another woman spoke up. Did you find that person? I did. He's a single father who teaches art and builds furniture. He drives a 10-year-old car and couldn't care less about quarterly earnings. And he's taught me more about leadership and balance than any business book ever could. The program met every Wednesday evening, which meant Victoria had to carefully protect that time from work encroachment. Her assistant learned to schedule around it. Board members adjusted to her new boundaries. 3 months into dating Marcus, Victoria's company faced a crisis that tested every commitment she'd made. The call came at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. David Chen from finance, his voice tight with controlled panic. We have a situation. Phoenix Distribution Center. Temperature controls failed on the vaccine shipment. $50 million worth of product potentially compromised. Client is threatening to pull their entire contract. Victoria sat up in bed, her own bed, having gone home the night before after dinner with Marcus and Harper. How long has the temperature been unstable? 4 hours. We caught it during routine monitoring, but we don't know if the vaccines are still viable. Schedule an emergency call with the client for 8 a.m. Get our quality control team testing samples immediately. I need viability data before we talk to them. She hung up and immediately started calculating. This client represented 20% of Cascade's revenue. Losing them would mean layoffs, damaged reputation, possibly the beginning of a downward spiral. Her phone showed Harper's school concert was tonight at 6. She'd promised to be there, had marked it in her calendar with 3 reminders. Victoria called Marcus at 7, catching him before he left for the community center. I have a work crisis. Phoenix Center failure. $50 million contract at risk. I'm going to try to make Harper's concert, but do what you need to do. His voice carried understanding, not judgment. Harper will understand if you can't make it. I promised her, and she knows promises sometimes break. It's okay, Victoria. But it wasn't okay. Victoria could hear the slight strain in his voice, the effort it took to be understanding when his daughter would be disappointed. The day became a blur of conference calls and data analysis and high-stakes negotiation. The Phoenix client was a major hospital system, their CEO furious about the potential vaccine compromise. Victoria spent 3 hours on video calls, presenting viability data, outlining their enhanced quality control protocols, negotiating compensation for their trouble. By 5 p.m., the crisis was resolving but not resolved. The client agreed to give them 48 hours to complete testing before making a final decision about the contract. Harper's concert started at 6. Victoria was still on her laptop, reviewing test results, when her phone alarm chimed at 5:15. She could make it. Barely. If she left immediately, drove fast, accepted that she'd missed the opening songs. Victoria closed her laptop, grabbed her coat, and ran for the parking garage. She arrived at the elementary school at 6:10, slipping into the back row of the auditorium. The stage held 40 kindergartners arranged in risers, all wearing matching blue t-shirts with whales screen printed on the front. Harper stood in the second row, her wild curls barely contained by a headband. She was singing about humpback whales, her voice enthusiastic, if not entirely on pitch. Then she saw Victoria. Her face transformed, surprise melting into pure joy. She waved mid-song, completely breaking character, earning giggles from the kids around her. Victoria waved back, throat tight with emotion she couldn't name. After the concert, Harper ran to her at full speed, launching herself into Victoria's arms with the confidence of a child who'd never been dropped. "You came!
I didn't think you would.
Victoria knelt to her level. I promised. I'll always try to keep my promises to you. Marcus appeared behind Harper, his expression soft with something that looked like gratitude and relief, and maybe love. Thank you for coming. I know it cost you. The contract's not finalized. I'm back on calls in an hour. But I needed to be here. Marcus kissed her, brief, in front of other parents and teachers, not caring who saw. You chose right. But as Victoria drove back to her office for the evening calls, she wondered. The Phoenix client wasn't happy about her stepping away for 90 minutes. Her team had fielded questions without her. She'd missed the critical window where decisions got made. Was choosing Harper's concert the right call? Or had she just jeopardized 200 jobs because she couldn't say no to a 6-year-old? The question haunted her through the night of negotiations that followed. 4 months into their relationship, the real test arrived in a form Victoria never anticipated. Marcus called on a Monday afternoon, his voice shaking with barely contained fury. Sarah's back. Victoria's stomach dropped. Sarah, the ex-wife who'd abandoned them 4 years ago. The ghost that hung over their family like smoke. What do you mean, back? She showed up at Harper's school, tried to take her home. The principal called me before letting her anywhere near my daughter. Are you at the school now? Yeah, Sarah's here too. She says she wants to talk, that she's changed. I'm coming. Victoria canceled her afternoon meetings and drove to the elementary school in 20 minutes that felt like hours. She found Marcus in the principal's office, his jaw so tight she could see the muscle jumping. Across from him sat a woman who had to be Sarah, beautiful in that bohemian way. Long, dark hair, flowing clothes, silver jewelry. She looked younger than 38, like someone who'd spent years in yoga studios and meditation retreats rather than raising a child. Sarah's eyes widened when Victoria entered. And who's this? The new girlfriend playing mommy to my daughter? I'm Victoria Crane. I care about Harper very much. For now, until you get bored and leave, like all you career women do. Marcus's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Don't. Sarah, you have no right to show up here after 4 years and start making judgments about anyone. The principal, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, held up a hand. This needs to be handled legally. Ms. Bennett, you signed away your parental rights. You have no legal standing to remove Harper from school or anywhere else. Sarah's eyes filled with tears that looked practiced. I was lost, Marcus. Depressed. I didn't understand what I was signing. I've been in therapy, gotten clean. The implication of past drug issues hung heavy. I want to be part of Harper's life again. You don't get to leave for 4 years and waltz back in. She's my daughter. Any judge will see that I was coerced, that I was mentally unwell when I terminated my rights. Marcus's face went pale. You're threatening custody? I'm asserting my rights as her biological mother. Victoria watched Marcus's world collapse in real time. 4 years of single parenting, of building a stable life for Harper, threatened by a woman who'd chosen herself over her child and now wanted credit for maternal biology. The meeting ended with Sarah's lawyer's card in Marcus's hand and a promise of legal action to come. In the parking lot, Marcus leaned against his truck, hands shaking. I can't afford to fight this. A custody battle will cost $30,000, maybe more. I don't have that kind of money. Victoria's mind immediately went to solutions. I can help. I'll pay for a lawyer, the best family law attorney in Seattle. No. The word came out sharp, final. Marcus, this is Harper's future. You can't fight Sarah's expensive lawyers with a public defender. I said no. His voice cracked. I'm not taking your money, Victoria. This isn't charity. This is... This is you solving problems with your checkbook because that's what you do. The words exploded out of him, months of insecurity finally finding voice. I can't be the guy you rescue. I need to fight for my daughter myself. Victoria stepped back like he'd slapped her. That's not fair. Maybe not, but it's honest. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, looking more broken than she'd ever seen him. I can't accept your money for this. It would make me feel like I'm being bought, like I'm not man enough to protect my own child. Even if it means losing because you're too proud to accept help? I don't know. His shout startled her. I don't know, Victoria. All I know is that I built my entire life on being able to take care of Harper myself, on not needing anyone. And if I take your money now, what does that make me? My partner? Someone I love who's facing something impossible alone. The words hung between them. The first time either had said love out loud. Marcus's expression crumpled. I can't. Not this. Please don't ask me to. He got in his truck and drove away, leaving Victoria standing in the school parking lot with the realization that loving someone sometimes meant watching them make the wrong choice. The next week brought cascading crises from multiple directions. Sarah filed for custody, claiming mental health issues had coerced her original termination of parental rights. Her lawyer, expensive, aggressive, made Marcus's public defender look like a high school intern. Simultaneously, Victoria's company faced a hostile takeover bid from Titan Logistics, their largest competitor. The board called an emergency meeting. Victoria sat at the head of the conference table, fielding questions from board members who smelled blood in the water. David Harrison, the oldest board member and biggest skeptic, led the attack. Titan's offering $4.50 per share. That's a 40% premium. Our shareholders will revolt if we reject this outright. We're stronger independent. Titan wants to gut our operations, fold us into their existing infrastructure, eliminate redundancy. That means layoffs. 200 people losing jobs. With very generous severance packages. David leaned back in his chair. Victoria, you've built something remarkable. Maybe it's time to cash out. Enjoy life. You're young, in a new relationship. Do you really want to keep grinding like this? The subtext was clear. Women should step back, let men run things, focus on family instead of career. Victoria's spine straightened. I didn't build this company to sell at the first serious offer. We're stronger independent, more innovative, more responsive to clients. Give me 30 days to prove it. The vote was close, 6-4 in her favor. 30 days to save her company, or watch it be devoured by competitors who valued profit over people. That night, she tried calling Marcus. He didn't answer. She texted, "Please talk to me." His response came an hour later. "Need space to figure this out. Not about you, about me." Victoria sat alone in her penthouse, looking out at the Seattle skyline she'd conquered, and wondered what the point of success was if you had no one to share it with. The custody hearing arrived 3 weeks later on a Thursday morning. Victoria took the day off, the first time she'd missed work for personal reasons in 8 years. She sat in the gallery of family court, watching Marcus face Sarah across the aisle. His lawyer looked competent, but outmatched. Sarah's legal team had clearly done their research, painting her as a victim of postpartum depression who'd been coerced into signing away rights she didn't understand. The judge, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes, listened carefully to both sides. Sarah's testimony portrayed her as reformed, rehabilitated, desperate to repair the damage she'd caused. She had therapist letters, character witnesses, a stable job at an art gallery in Los Angeles. Marcus presented 4 years of documentation, school records, medical files, photos of father-daughter activities. His mother testified. Harper's teacher testified. The community center director testified about Marcus's dedication as a father and teacher. But he couldn't deny Sarah's claims. She had been depressed. He had wanted her to sign away her rights. The termination had happened quickly, without her having separate legal counsel. Then the judge asked if Victoria wanted to testify as a character witness. Sarah's lawyer objected. Miss Crane has only known Mr. Reed for 5 months. Her testimony isn't relevant. The judge overruled. I'll allow it. Miss Crane, please take the stand. Victoria swore to tell the truth and faced Sarah's lawyer, a man whose expensive suit matched his aggressive posture. Miss Crane, how long have you known Mr. Reed? About 5 months. So, relatively brief. And you're romantically involved? Yes. Isn't it true you have significant financial resources? That you've been funding Mr. Reed's lifestyle, this custody battle? The trap. Making Marcus look like a gold digger, their relationship transactional. Victoria met the lawyer's eyes steadily. I offered to help with legal costs. Marcus refused. He's one of the most independent, proud men I've ever met. He won't accept help, even when he desperately needs it. Convenient story. It's the truth. I've watched Marcus parent Harper for 5 months. I've seen him sacrifice sleep to help with homework, turn down higher-paying work to attend school events, teach her that she's worthy of love just by existing. He's not a perfect parent, no one is, but he's a devoted one. She turned to address the judge directly. Sarah might have biological rights, but Marcus has been there every single day for 4 years. He's earned the right to be her father. The judge called a recess. Victoria found Marcus in the hallway, pale and shaking. Thank you for testifying. I wish you'd let me help more. I know. His voice broke. I'm sorry for what I said in the parking lot. About you solving things with money. That wasn't fair. You were scared. I understand, scared. They held each other until the bailiff called them back for the ruling. The judge's decision took 15 minutes to deliver. She acknowledged Sarah's claims of coercion, recognized the validity of postpartum depression, understood a mother's desire to reconnect with her child, but Marcus retained full legal custody. Sarah was granted supervised visitation, 2 hours per month with a therapist present, to be reevaluated in 6 months. The court recognizes that biological connection matters, the judge explained, but consistency matters more. Harper has stability with her father. We won't disrupt that without compelling evidence of unfitness, which hasn't been presented. Sarah cried. Her lawyer promised to appeal, but for now, Harper stayed with Marcus. In the courthouse hallway, Marcus pulled Victoria into his arms and just held on. I'm sorry. For pushing you away. For being too proud to accept help. You were protecting Harper the only way you knew how. I get it. I don't want to push you away anymore. I want to figure out how to let you in. Even when it's hard? Especially when it's hard. They left the courthouse together, Harper safe at school, unaware of how close she'd come to having her world upended. But Victoria's phone buzzed constantly with messages from her board. The 30 days were almost up. Titan's offer stood. Her investors were getting restless. The final board meeting happened the same day as Harper's 7th birthday party. Victoria had promised to be there. Marcus was throwing a celebration at Green Lake Park, Princess Dinosaur themed, because Harper still couldn't choose between her interests. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. The party started at 3. Victoria sat at the head of the conference table, presenting her case for remaining independent. New contracts in the pipeline, innovation in cold chain technology, client retention strategies that would maintain their competitive edge. David Harrison led the opposition. Sophia, with all respect, you seem distracted lately. This used to be your sole focus. What's changed? Every board member turned to her, waiting. Victoria could have lied, could have insisted nothing had changed, that she was still the workaholic CEO who sacrificed everything for quarterly earnings. Instead, she told the truth. What's changed is I've learned that building a company matters, but building a life matters more. I was at a custody hearing last week for my boyfriend's daughter, a little girl who needed me there, who trusts me to show up. She looked around the table. You're right that I'm scattered. I'm trying to figure out how to be an excellent CEO and an excellent partner and an excellent mother figure. Some days I fail at all three, but I'm done believing I have to choose. She stood, projecting the confidence that had built this company. So here's my pitch. Keep Cascade independent, not because I'm perfectly focused, but because I've built something sustainable enough to withstand my humanity. We have brilliant teams, strong systems, loyal clients. This company doesn't need me to sacrifice everything anymore. It needs me to lead strategically and trust the people I've hired. David shook his head. This is exactly what Titan warned us about. Female CEOs who can't maintain focus once they have families. The CFO, Marcus Chen, no relation to the couple from the wedding, spoke up. I've worked with Victoria for 6 years. She's always been brilliant. But the last few months, she's been more than brilliant. She's been human. And honestly, it's made her a better leader. More empathetic, more willing to delegate, more strategic about priorities. The vote came down to the wire, 7-3 to remain independent. Victoria walked out of the conference room at 2:45. Harper's party had already started. She drove to Green Lake Park, 20 miles over the speed limit, arriving at 3:15 to find Princess Dinosaur chaos in full swing. 27-year-olds screaming around picnic tables decorated with tiaras and T-Rex cutouts. Harper saw her and shrieked with joy. "Victoria, you came! I thought you had work." I did, but I finished early because I wasn't going to miss this. She hadn't finished early. She'd chosen. The board could have voted to sell while she was driving here. She'd gambled 200 jobs and her company's future on making it to a 7-year-old's birthday party. But looking at Harper's face, at Marcus's expression of relief and gratitude, Victoria knew she'd chosen right. Later, after cake and presents and the organized chaos of children hyped on sugar, Victoria and Marcus sat on a bench watching Harper play with her friends. "You almost lost your company today." "I know. But you came anyway." "I promised. And I'm learning that some promises matter more than profit margins." Marcus took her hand, his carpenter's fingers lacing through hers. "I've been thinking about something." "Yeah?" "About us. About what we're building. About whether this is just dating or something more permanent." Victoria's heart stuttered. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you. Not just because you showed up today, but because you keep showing up. For me, for Harper, even when it costs you. I'm saying I want to build a life with you. The messy, complicated, imperfect kind where we both keep our careers and our identities and figure out how to make space for each other anyway." He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a ring. Not a diamond, something more meaningful, a band he'd crafted himself from reclaimed walnut inlaid with abalone shell from Puget Sound beaches. Beautiful in its simplicity. This isn't technically a proposal. Not yet. But it's a promise that when I do propose, I'll mean it. That I'm in this for the long term if you are. Victoria's hands shook as she took the ring, feeling the smooth wood warm from his pocket. "When you do propose?" "Soon. When the timing's right. When Harper's settled from the custody stuff. When your company's stable again. When we've both had time to breathe." I don't need time to breathe. Victoria slipped the ring onto her right hand, saving the left for later. I know what I want. I want Sunday park days and Wednesday dinners and your terrible jokes about sawdust. I want to be Harper's mother in all the ways that matter. I want to build furniture together and build a company together and build a family that doesn't look like anyone else's but works for us. Marcus pulled her close, kissing her with a kind of certainty that came from knowing exactly what you were choosing. So is that a yes to the proposal I haven't actually made yet? That's a yes to everything. To you, to Harper, to messy, complicated, imperfect forever. Harper ran over, breathless from playing. What are you guys talking about? About family. Marcus lifted her onto his lap. About how sometimes the best families are the ones you choose, not the ones you're born into. Harper noticed the ring on Victoria's hand immediately. Is that from Daddy? It is. Does it mean you're staying? Victoria met the child's eyes, this little girl who'd entered her life through orange juice and chaos, who'd drawn her into family portraits before Victoria realized she was being chosen. It means I'm staying, if you want me to. Harper threw her arms around Victoria's neck with the unself-conscious affection of a child who'd never learned to guard her heart. I want you to stay forever and ever. Then that's how long I'll stay. 3 months later, on a Sunday morning at the original Riverside Cafe, Marcus got down on one knee in front of the table where they'd first met. Harper stood beside him, holding a sign she'd made. Will you marry my daddy and be my mom? The cafe customers stopped their conversations. The barista paused mid-pour. Marcus's hands shook slightly as he pulled out another ring, this one with a small diamond, nothing ostentatious, just right for someone who valued substance over flash. Victoria Crane, you walked into my life because my daughter has terrible coordination and a love of orange juice. You were supposed to be a favor for one difficult day. Instead, you became the person I can't imagine living without. His voice steadied. You taught me that accepting help isn't weakness, that partnership means letting someone else be strong when you're tired, that I could be a carpenter and a father and still be enough for someone extraordinary. He looked at Harper, then back at Victoria. Will you marry me? Will you be Harper's mother officially? Will you build a messy, complicated, beautiful life with us? Victoria's eyes filled with tears she didn't try to hide. She thought about the woman who'd stood in her office 9 months ago, trembling with rage and fear, convinced she was fundamentally unlovable. She thought about everything that had changed, not because she'd become someone different, but because she'd found someone who loved exactly who she already was. Yes. God, yes. 1,000 times yes. Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, left hand this time, where it belonged. Harper launched herself at both of them, and they ended up in a 3-way hug in the middle of a Seattle coffee shop while strangers applauded. The wedding happened 3 months later in the same botanical garden where they'd practiced holding hands. Small ceremony, 50 people who actually mattered. Marcus's family, Victoria's parents from Portland, the women from her mentorship program, Harper's school friends. Harper wore a purple dress she'd chosen herself, covered in sea creatures. She carried a basket of flower petals and kept her promise about restraint for approximately 30 seconds before creating what she called a magical flower storm. Victoria walked down the aisle alone, not because she lacked family to escort her, but because she wanted to symbolize choosing this herself, claiming this happiness on her own terms. Marcus stood at the altar crying before she was halfway there. Their vows were brief and personal. Victoria promised to keep learning, keep growing, keep making space for park days and bedtime stories, to remember that quarterly reports mattered, but this mattered more. Marcus promised to let her in, even when his pride wanted to push her away. To celebrate her success, instead of feeling threatened by it, to build furniture and build a family, and remind her daily that being driven and being lovable weren't opposite things. When the officiant pronounced them married, Harper cheered louder than anyone. The reception was exactly what they'd wanted: good food, genuine conversation, dancing that ranged from elegant to silly. Harper appointed herself official dance coordinator, teaching various guests moves she'd apparently invented that morning. Victoria's parents pulled her aside during dinner. "We're proud of you, sweetheart, not just for your company, but for this. For finding someone who sees you clearly and loves you anyway." Her mother's eyes were wet. "For learning that you don't have to choose between success and happiness." "I had to unlearn some things first. I spent so long believing being driven meant being alone." Her father hugged her tightly. "Marcus and Harper are lucky to have you, and you're lucky to have them. That's what partnership should be. Mutual luck." Later in the evening, Victoria found herself at a table with several women from her mentorship program, all of whom had asked to attend. "This is what you meant about not having to choose? About finding someone who celebrates your success instead of resenting it?" Victoria looked across the reception to where Marcus was dancing with Harper, both of them laughing at something only they understood. "It took work from both of us. Marcus had to be secure enough not to feel threatened by my career. I had to be intentional enough to actually make time for our relationship. Neither of those things happened automatically. But it's possible. It's possible. You just have to find someone who sees your drive as strength instead of deficiency, who understands you don't have to choose between building something meaningful in your work and building something meaningful in your life." As the reception wound down, Marcus found Victoria on the garden path, looking at the sunset. "Everything okay, Mrs. Reed?" The name still sounded strange and perfect. "Everything's better than okay. I'm just thinking about how different my life looks now compared to a year ago." "Regrets?" "Not a single one." She leaned into him. "Last year I was convinced I'd failed because Richard left. Now I'm grateful he did, because it brought me here, to you, to Harper, to this life we're building." Marcus pulled her close. "No regrets about taking a chance on the guy whose daughter ruined your shoes? Harper's coordination problems are truly a gift to us all." They stood together, watching the sun set over the botanical garden, this place where they'd practiced being a couple and were now celebrating becoming a family. 2 years later, Victoria stood in her office looking at the walls covered in Harper's artwork. The original sea turtle carefully framed, the maybe family drawing from the workshop. Dozens of new pieces added over time, orcas and octopuses and elaborate underwater scenes. Her company had survived the takeover attempt, grown stronger. The mentorship program had expanded to 3 cohorts. She'd learned to leave the office at reasonable hours, to trust her teams, to understand that being present for her family didn't mean abandoning her professional ambitions. Harper burst through the door, 9 years old now, all legs and enthusiasm, still drawing sea creatures but adding scientific accuracy to her art. "Mom, Dad says dinner's ready, and you promised no work after 6. "You're right. I'm coming." She closed her laptop, left the quarterly reports for tomorrow, and followed her daughter home. At their house, a craftsman in Ballard with a yard for Harper and a workshop for Marcus, she found her husband cooking while listening to KEXP. He had expanded his carpentry business, now employed 3 other craftspeople, taught advanced woodworking at the community center. They'd built exactly what they'd promised each other, the messy, complicated, imperfect life, where they both kept their careers and identities and made space for each other anyway.
After dinner, Harper insisted on showing them her latest marine biology project. Then they read together a chapter book about ocean exploration that Harper had checked out from the library. When Harper finally went to bed, Marcus and Victoria sat on their back porch with wine and the comfortable silence of people who'd learned each other's rhythms.
Happy? Victoria thought about the question, about the woman who'd stood trembling in her office, convinced success and love were mutually exclusive, about everything she'd learned since then. Happier than I knew was possible. Not because life is perfect, but because I finally understand that perfect was never the goal. Real was the goal. This is real. Marcus raised his glass. To real. To real. To us. To families built from orange juice accidents and terrible coordination. They clinked glasses as the Seattle summer evening settled around them, the future uncertain, as futures always were, but no longer terrifying, just full of possibility neither had expected to find in a coffee shop 9 months ago, when a 6-year-old girl with wild curls and worse coordination had changed everything.